The problem with pig blood was how horrible it smelled when it went off, and how quickly it could spoil on a balmy evening. On the upside, getting several buckets of the stuff was easy in the Mercantile Alliance. All it took was a quick trip to the local butcher. Unlike human blood, there was no need for murder. Well aware that his pint-sized apprentice was staring at him as if he'd lost his mind, Timmy dipped his paintbrush back into the bucket and scribbled another doodle on the wall. This particular doodle was his take on a scene from one of Spot's favorite picture books. He wasn't the greatest artist, but he thought the pig blood gave the scene a certain aesthetic, albeit not the aesthetic the author had intended. After all, the picture book was aimed at children, not blood-crazed cultists, although he supposed there was a non-zero overlap between those two categories. And wasn't that a disturbing thought? "Master, what are you doing?" Katie asked. Perched on her shoulder like an ornery rodent falcon, Rembrandt studied the room intently with his lone eye. There were splatters of pig blood everywhere, and Timmy had painted a multitude of symbols upon the walls, only a handful of which were proper runes and seals. The rest were simply there to look scary. Rembrandt had probably figured out what he was planning, but Katie was still trying to put the pieces together. His apprentice was incredibly intelligent, but she lacked experience. That was fine. She was young, and time was the best cure for inexperience. His job as her master was to make sure she acquired the experience she needed without getting stabbed, blown up, or otherwise mangled. By those standards, his master had been a dismal failure, since he had been personally responsible for a great many incidents in which Timmy had been stabbed, blown up, and otherwise mangled. Timmy splashed more pig blood on the ceiling and flicked a bit onto the nearest wall. Interesting. That splatter resembled a mongoose fighting a bear. Or perhaps he was reading too much into it. "What do you see?" Katie pointed with her shadows. He doubted the blood bothered her. She'd dealt with far worse over the years. She'd once made the mistake of using her shadows to crush a giant lizard that had been clinging onto the ceiling of an ancient ruin. The resulting downpour of gore had convinced her that he truly had been onto something when he'd insisted that the very first runes and seals she should weave into her clothing were those for protection, followed by those for keeping clean. "You have seals in place to clean this room, but you've modified them. Rather than restoring this room to pristine condition, they're designed to only clean up messes that occur after they've been added." "Well spotted." A word of advice, Katie. If you want to avoid suspicion, never leave a room too clean. If all the rooms in a house are messy except one, people are going to ask questions. It's usually better not to give anyone reasons to snoop around. Timmy put down his paintbrush and moved the bucket of pig blood next to the large, imposing desk at the front of the room. Decor was an important part of intimidation, and it was almost time for them to get started. This is especially true for people like us who actually do have things to hide. Katie watched as he reached into the sack he'd brought along. Having Gerald around had spoiled them. The bureaucrat could be counted on to carry anything and everything without any complaints. Want to bring along 50 cows for Spot to eat? No problem. Why not throw in a dozen more just to be safe? A hungry dragon was an irritable dragon, and an irritable dragon typically meant a significant increase in property damage. How about a volatile explosive that the demolition rats had thrown together in a bout of drunken genius? Go ahead. Gerald's magic made transporting even the most ridiculous weapons completely safe. The bureaucrat also had a bafflingly huge collection of things stored away, most of which he seemed to forget about until he needed them or somebody reminded him about them. Want a bowl of milk? Gerald had plenty of fresh milk stored away, along with dozens of different types of cereal. Need a weapon? Gerald could equip an entire army.